Hello everyone, today we'll continue learning Python and today we'll continue talking about Django SQL optimization. So let's start. If you haven't seen my last video about ORM or SQL optimization in Django, then you should watch it because I will not explain everything that I explained in that previous video. But now let's just start. So what do we have right here? We have the same product model, we have another product type model that I just created. So product is the model from the last video, but product type it's the new one, and today we'll talk about foreign keys for some time because foreign key optimization is enormous, and there are three types of foreign keys, so one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, so there are a lot of things to consider. Today we'll just talk about one-to-one ORM, foreign key ORM optimization. But first of all, I want to say that if you want to, I want to show it to you. So let me import from products.models, import product. I just want to show you that in the previous video we used product.objects.o, and for example we used .query from str to see the SQL query that we optimized. So to see like how our SQL query changes when we optimize our ORM functions. Because again, in the end, every ORM function, every ORM method is converted to SQL. But in that video, I set up another method of inspecting our SQL queries. So I will just write product objects right now, and you will see that I have my SQL queries in my console right here. So as you can see, there are two SQL queries, but I think that's just because of the debug mode that I set on my specific settings in settings.py of my project. So as you can see, that's our SQL query. It's the same as it was in the previous video, but now what I want to tell you. If you want to see the same SQL queries in your console in a file, what you need to do is set up logging. So Django allows you to set up powerful logging. It has powerful logging capabilities, and if you want to set up your logging, what you can do, your logging for SQL queries, what you can do, you can copy that configuration from here, but or you can add, if you have your own configuration, you can just add DjangoDB backends at the end of the loggers. So what it does, we have versions, disable existing loggers, some settings, then we have formatters that format our logging messages. In our case, we use module, the current time, the level name, for example, info, error, debug, and we use the message. In our case, it will be our SQL query. Then we have handlers, so in our case, handler is a console, so logging stream handler, which will print every log entry to the console, to the terminal that we are working in. And then we have loggers, which are DjangoDB backends. So that's a great thing about Django, that it allows you to set up different loggers for different modules. In our case, what I did right here, I created DjangoDB backends key in my loggers dictionary, and it will log all of the SQL queries to our console. So using our handlers to our console, to the stream handler, using our formatter that uses that specific format. So we will see all the SQL queries in our console. And that's beneficial for us because today I'll show you how many queries you can execute without even knowing that you execute them. So again, if you want to see all the queries in the console, you can omit that configuration, but it's really useful to have during your development because it really shows you all of the extensive SQL queries that you make. You can copy that configuration if you want. So yeah, that's just it. But typically you need to add the DjangoDB backends at the end and add some handler to it. And that is that. So that's everything I want to tell you about that. Okay, now let's go to models. So I added product type right here, but it's a simple model. It just has a foreign key to our product model right here, and we delete. So on delete is set to models.cascade. So if our product is deleted, product type that points to the same product will be deleted as well. Nothing very crazy right here. And now, first of all, let's talk about other functions that we use without foreign keys. So foreign key will be at the end of the video. If you want to optimize your foreign keys, then go like at the, I don't know, 15th minute mark. Okay, just watch the whole video. So now let's talk about simple optimizations of simple flat models. So flat model is, or flat table in SQL is when you don't have any foreign keys. In our case, product is a flat model because there are no foreign keys right here. And if we are talking about optimization of flat models, we talked about that in the previous video. But now I want to tell you that we have a lot of other functions that we can use to optimize our models. In our case, we used product object so, and as you know, product object so is a very heavy query to execute because it's literally product select all from product's product. So we use select all. And I told you, again, if you haven't seen the last video, you should watch it, but I told you that we have values only and other functions like defer and values list to optimize our filter, exclude, or all SQL queries. I talked about values and only, and today I'll talk about values list. So what's the difference between values? For example, values from I don't know, title and manufacturer. As you can see, title tested in, manufacturer test, title test 1, manufacturer test 1, title test 2, manufacturer test 2, and so on. So, and our SQL query is optimized. And what's the difference between values and, let me clear it all, and values list? So the only difference is that values list just returns tuples instead of dictionaries. And that is the problem, and that's an advantage and a disadvantage. Why? Because as you can see, by the way, our SQL query is optimized as well, so nothing crazy right here. It's values list and only execute the same SQL queries, but how they represent their data is there is a difference between them. So values returns a dictionary or set of dictionaries, query set of dictionaries. Only returns query set of models, Django models. So if you want to work with, if you want to call functions, your own functions, like Python functions for your Django models, if you want to, update your models, then you can use only. However, values list returns tuples. And what's the problem with that? And what's an advantage and a disadvantage? Advantage is as well as with only and values. So values is very, it does not require a lot of memory. Because when we are talking about only function, so again, only, let me show you. As you can see, we return Django models. And those Django models are very memory heavy because these are real Python objects. When we are talking about values, we return dictionaries. Those are not as memory heavy as Django models because we don't have any additional functions for them. They are stored in, a lot of their work is done in C programming language. So yeah, they are stored in C, everything is stored in C in Python. So they're not as memory heavy as Django models. But still there is a problem with them. They are very memory heavy compared to other Python data types. So when we are talking about lists and dictionaries, for example, dictionary will always be, if the dictionary and the list are the same sizes, dictionary will always require additional memory compared to lists because of how things work. So I don't want to go into hashes and dictionaries require additional memory. That's it. But we have another function in Django which is called values list. So instead of values, we just append _list at the end. It does the same SQL query, but it returns tuples and a list of tuples. So that is the best query if you want to save memory, because it literally returns tuples. These are not memory heavy at all. However, there is a problem. If you want to use values list because it requires less memory, then there is a problem with your code. Not with the values list, not with the Django, but with your code. For example, if we're talking about a simple product, let me just execute the same query, and I'll get the first product from that. So the first product is 0. So as you can see, that is the first product. How we can get the title of our first product from our product query set? Well, we can write product objects or values list title manufacturer 0 from 0. So yeah, as you can see, that's it. And why do we have, we execute SQL query because I write product objects all. So yeah, that's normal. But still, as you can see, we the problem is not in SQL or in any Django, or it's not related to Django, it's related to humans, to us. So we don't understand when we see indexes. So indexes are not convenient for us at all. It's better to use values list in just values instead of values list in a lot of cases, just because values list returns tuples and you have indexes in tuples. So you cannot write just, for example, dot title. You cannot write dot manufacturer. You can do it in values when you use title like that, so as a key, manufacturer as a key. But that's better because other programmers that will work with your project will see that you get the title. So you know that, okay, values list returns me my title, manufacturer, I can write 0, 0. But what 0, 0 actually means? It means nothing. And it's actually a lot better to write values, just values from key title, because it's much more descriptive. For example, first, oh no, we cannot write first because, we can write first because it's a query set at the end. First from title. It returns the same result, but it's much more descriptive for other programmers. You can use values list, but be very cautious with it, because if you want to use indexes, then it's better. So if you want to, for example, query manufacturer title in different places, then it's better to use values. You spend more memory, but you will, well, first of all, your dictionaries are faster, so they require more memory than tuples, but they are faster when we're talking about finding the key value pairs. So hashes are just faster than indexes. And this is the first advantage of using values compared to values list. The second advantage is that you can use keys. So you can use like title, manufacturer keys and other keys for your fields. That's better just for other programmers, so it's much more descriptive. That's what I mean. But still, you can use values list. When? For example, when you have one value. For example, you only need title. Of course, you can use values list. Why do you need values with, if you put values, so I think you know that you'll see title test1, title test2, title test3. Why do you need that if you can use values list and receive a list of tuples with only one value? So you know that that's title, and other programmers will see, okay, he only requires title from the database. So there's only one thing that you can later get from that query set. It's title. Other programmers know that, and that's better if we are talking about values list compared to values, when you have only one value. And what's even better is if you want to use those values as a flat list. So in our case, that list is not flat because we use a list and a tuple inside of that list. So we use a list of tuples. But if you want to use flat lists, what's the difference? The difference is that flat lists just contain the raw values. So in our case, query set test1, test2, test3. And as you can see, that may be beneficial for your program, that may be beneficial for some functions when you, for example, need to use in SQL statements. So for example, where I don't know, ID in 1, 2, 3, like that. So yeah, it may be beneficial for you if you want to use it like that. And of course, it saves up memory. And if you have, for example, a code when you need to use lists, when you need to use iterables, values list again can use indexes. And if you use too much indexes, your code becomes unreadable. And that's one big problem. Okay, so values list, again, it does the same queries as only values, but it the only difference is how it returns the values, and it returns its values in tuples or in flat lists. And by the way, of course, if you have two different manufacturers, two different fields, then of course you cannot use flat. Then of course you cannot use flat, because flat is not valid when values list is called with more than one field. So you cannot, like, literally. I think that's logical, because how you can translate two values into one flat list? Like, if you want them to be stored in separate tuples, so every value for every model is stored in separate tuple, then of course that's just without flat. So you can use many fields, but if you use in flat, then you can only get one field out of it. So flat true, and as you can see, test1, test3, test1, test2, test3. That's how it works. Okay, so that was about values list. Now let's talk about count and exist function. So for example, if I need to count all of my products, how many products I have in my database, in my table, I can use product objects O, and then I can use len from it. Len like that. As you can see, it says 3. That's the right answer. Everything is alright. But you can see the problem in my SQL query. As you can see, ID, title, manufacturer, price, A, B, C, product secret ID. So we get all the fields. Again, we execute select all from. Okay, we can fix it. So we know that we can use, in our case, here we can use values list, because why do we need dictionaries if we can have just the ID? And we can use it as flat equals true. So now we will only get, let me show you, we will only get 1 to 3, and of course we can get the length of that. As you can see, 3, the same result. That's just great. But there is a problem. Still there is a problem, not with Django now, but with Python itself. Because if you know SQL, then you know that there is a count function in SQL. So we can use select count from products ID, from all, from products product. So count function in SQL. But as you can see, our queries do not use it. Why? Simply because when we use len from our query set, we count the amount of values in the Python iterable. So we do not use count from SQL. We do not say, database, you need to count those values. Why? Because Django simply does not know what we want to do with those values next. We want to, I don't know, send them to our user, store them somewhere, we need to modify them. It just executes the raw product object so values is ID. So of course we only get IDs, but again, as you can see, 1 to 3 is a Python list. And we use len from that. What's the possible problem with that? Well, first of all, you store the whole list as the result. So in case when you have, for example, 5 million entries in your table, you store all of those entries in your query set, in your Python program. It requires a lot of RAM, so yeah, that's the problem. That's the first problem. The second one is that you iterate through your list using len. So when you're using len, again, that len right here, you iterate through every entry of your list, so through 1, through 2, 3, and so on, and you simply count them in Python. Why is that bad? It's because if you have SQL count query, then you can use it to count your things, because SQL is designed to work with data. It knows how to work with data. It knows that it has indexes, it has other things, like it has a lot of internal code that helps databases, SQL, to work with data. But when I'm talking about Python and Django, it's not as convenient, it's not as fast, as optimized as it is in SQL, because we simply use len. Len is optimized function, I can say that. But still, the time of execution of len function in Python is big O from n. So big O is, well, you can watch my video about algorithms and you'll understand what big O from n means. So big O is how many steps we need to take to execute an algorithm. And in our case, we need to take n steps. So the amount of the elements that we have in our query set. In our case, for example, len from 1 to 3 will be 3. So big O is 3. O from 3, because we need to count that element, and that element. That's it. But if we have count SQL function, why don't we use it? Well, let's do it. Product objects O.count. As you can see, select count from O as count from products product. So we literally use count function in SQL, and it's optimized, it's better, and yeah, that's how it works. By the way, we can use, as you can see, I did not write any values list, any only queries, because I don't need to. I literally do not take other fields rather than count. That's just better. And you can omit O if you want, and just use product objects count. It will do the same query and return the same result. That's how it works. Let me clear the output, and now let's talk about exist. So again, if you can in every case, like literally in every case, there is no case when you don't need to access database to use count function and use when some other functions by yourself in Python. So every time you want to count something, use count function in Django. Never use when in Python. You can use it, but not with Django ORM. So that's what I mean. Product objects count is better in every case. Okay, well, if you think about it, there are cases when is better, but in those cases are an exception. And as you know, exception is not, I forgot how to say it, but in Python then there is, it says that exception is not exceptional enough. So every exception is not very, okay, so there is no exception, that's what it says in Python then. You can read it and you'll understand what I mean. So literally so you need to use count every time you want to count your entries in your table, in your database, or anywhere, if you work with Django ORM or SQL. That's how it works. Okay, and now let's talk about exists. So the same goes with exists. For example, what you can do is use product.objects.all and then use boolean from it. So let's go home, boolean, like that, and as you can see, select product ID, title. I will not explain how to improve that query, because product objects all will return true. If you have, or how to improve, we will not improve that query because it's useless to have exist function in Django. So I think you understand that we can use values list, values only, and other things on our product.objects.all function, but we don't need to right now. I will not write that right now. So boolean in Python typically returns true if your iterable, in our case query set, has at least one element inside of it. So it will return true if query set has at least one element inside of it, but it will return false if we don't have any elements at all. So in our case, we have some products in our database, so we return true. Still, as you can see, there is query, and as you know, what we can do, as many of you know, we can use product.objects.all exists. We don't need to write through a boolean function right here, because exists function returns true, and as you can see, query is optimized as well. Select one as a. Again, in that query, when we use boolean from product object, so we get the whole table, we store a lot of data in RAM, so it's not great at all. But when we're talking about exists, we just select one. So select one in SQL is like just get one value if something exists. So that query will give us true or false if we have elements or not in our table, and we literally return true at the end. So that's how it works. Always use exists and count instead of boolean and when functions in Python. So always use SQL functions if you can. Always do the work that database and SQL was supposed to do, rather than you will do it in Python. So yeah, that's how it works. Let's clear it all and let's finally talk about foreign keys. So again, there are a lot of other functions in flat tables like defer, and I cannot think about any other functions right now because there are a lot of things that you need to know if you work with Django models, and even simple Django models like our product. So flat Django models. For example, when query sets are evaluated, how query sets are cached, how query sets work, so all these things. And I will explain them to you, but not today. Now let's move to foreign key, because that's a very interesting part of today's video. So in order to use foreign key, we need to import product type from our product. So let's do it from products.models. Import product type, and then product type.objects.all. As you can see, I have some product types right here, and as you can see, our product type model is a very small one. So our queries are not as heavy as they are in product model, because simply we have two values. We have ID of the model, so ID of the product type, and ID of the product model itself, so product foreign key. So again, that's the ID of the row, and that's the foreign key for our product object. And now what I want to do, I want to, for example, print all of the titles of the products that are related to my product type. So again, what I can do, for product type in product type.objects.all. what I can do is print product type dot product. So if you know Django foreign keys, you know what I'm doing. So I'm simply saying that product type, please use your product that is related to you, and then please print its title. Let's run it. And I think you can already see what's the problem with our code or with our foreign keys right here. So let's go through our code and let's go through our queries. The first thing that we need to execute is, of course, product objects all, because we need to have some products in order to iterate through them in our form. So our query set is being evaluated. We select, that's the first one, we select product ID, just product type ID and product ID from product type table, and that's it. But what are we doing after that? After that we go to print, and then we use product type dot product dot title. So what does that mean? That means that we literally query our every time we call our product, we query it from the database. Why? Because the first query, product type query, as you can see, it's select product type ID, product type, product. We don't select any title, any manufacturer, any price in that query. And because we don't do that, when I am calling my product type dot product, I need to get that information from somewhere, and that somewhere is the database. So in case I need to get my product and I need to query it from my database. That's just how it works. And in our case, as you can see, we use select product ID, title, manufacturer, so we use the same query, but the problem is that we use where at the end, so we only get one product instance at a time. And yeah, as you can see, we have like what, 6 queries. So for every time we print, so for every iteration we print, when we print our test, we execute one SQL query. And I think you know why that's bad. Because literally, if we have, for example, 5,000 entries in our table, we execute 5,001 because we execute product type objects all queries in our database. And yeah, that's why you don't need to use just foreign keys with product type objects all, and why foreign keys are really complex in Django or in actually any query optimization system, because foreign keys, they're a little bit different. So if you know SQL, you know that we have joins in SQL. So join is when you connect two tables together. And by the way, if you don't know SQL, then it's probably the best time is now for you to learn it, because SQL is really important for any programmer, for any person who is somehow connected to IT. Okay, so in our case, we select and we don't get any, or we don't execute any joins at the first query, at our product type object so. Why don't we execute any joins? Why, you can say, but why Django does not get my foreign keys for me? Wouldn't it be optimized, like we need to make one query instead of like what, 5,000, so O from N, again O from N because we need to make N queries from our database. So if Django would have fetched all of the foreign keys when we just use, for example, product object so or product type object so, what would have happened? For example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tables. And what if we get, for example, table 1, objects all. Table 1 is related to table 2. And you may say, okay, so wouldn't it be optimized if Django would have prefetched my table 2 with my table 1? Well, yes, it would have been optimized, so you would not make any excessive SQL calls with table number 2. But if Django would prefetch all of the tables, all of the foreign keys by itself, there is one problem. The problem is that if we prefetch all of the tables, then what do? If our table number 2 is somehow connected to other 5 tables. we need to prefetch all of those tables as well, because like we don't want to make any excessive SQL calls, and if Django would have prefetched table number 2, it needs table number 2 will prefetch table number 3, table number 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. So that's why Django does not use joins by default, because we would have queried the whole database with a simple query of product type object all. But you can use joins in Django, and that's the great news. Because in Django, what do we have? We have product objects all dot prefetch related. So prefetch related we have also, prefetch related is the wrong function. We have select related, because prefetch related is also for Django query optimization, and I'll also talk about it, but prefetch related is used with many-to-many keys, or many-to-many foreign keys, but select related with one-to-one. So in our case, we have one-to-one relation with our product type and our product models, and what we need to do is use product type object solve dot select related, and we need to provide one thing inside of here. We need to provide the name of the foreign key that we want to prefetch, and that's one. Let me remove that from here, because I want to explain, and that as well, because I want to explain why select related is a little bit different from only values and values list. So when we are talking about only values list, what do we have? We have one simple function that can make our queries better. Like we make our queries better and we forget about that function forever. But there is a problem. The problem is that if we use, there is a problem with select related. If we use select related with all the foreign keys as the arguments inside of it, so for example, I have manufacturer as another model, I have price as a separate model, I have, manufacturer, delivery as a separate model, and if I put all of my foreign keys inside of my select related, then my query would not be optimized at all. Because let me just show you what the query looks like. Select product type ID, product ID, and after that what do we have? Products product ID, products product title, products product manufacturer, price, and so on and so on and so on. As you can see, we use inner join right here. Inner join on, and yeah, so we use joins. Now our query will have all the information that we need for our products. But there is one problem. The problem is that if we put other foreign keys inside of here, for example, I don't know, manufacturer, it's not a foreign key, but you get what I mean. If we have other foreign keys and we put all of them inside of our select related, then our query will be heavy. Because look at the query that we execute when we use all. It's just select ID, product ID, 2 fields. When we use select related, we first of all join our tables, and after that we get other additional fields from our database. Join is a very heavy operation. But why do we need to use select related if join is a heavy operation? It's not as heavy as using as calling SQL query for every time you get a product inside of your for. So if you want to use select related, use it. Think before you use it. So in our case, select related product. Why I can put product inside of my select related? Because I literally need it right here. Product type dot product dot title. That's how it works. I need it right here. But if I, for example, have manufacturer, but I don't use it with my query set that I'm using that I'm calling right here, that I'm creating right here, then you should never put your manufacturer or any other model inside of your query set, inside of your select related function. Because if you're 100% sure that you will use that specific foreign key, of course put it. Otherwise, omit it. And you will see an error if you forget something. So, or you will not see an error, but you will see like that you have a lot of SQL queries. And if you forget, for example, to put manufacturer right here, but you use it somewhere in your for, or in any other function, in any other method, in any other class. So if you use other foreign keys in other places and you have your Django logging set up to log your Django DB backend, so you see all of the SQL queries that are coming out of your program, then you can see that you have some additional SQL queries that you can, or you should omit them, and that's how it works. But for now, let me just show you what will happen if I use select related from product right here. as you can see, we only make one SQL query. So the second one, I think it shows us when our SQL query ended, or I don't know what it shows to us, but we have two SQL queries right here. I don't know why is that. Maybe because of the debug level that we're using with our SQL logging. So yeah, that's how it works. But let's see what do we have right here. Instead of querying our product every time we get it as a variable in Python, we query them in that first query. So again, query with selector rated is heavier than query without it. However, if you're using that foreign key in if you're using some foreign keys in your Python code down below when you use your query set that you just created without selector rated, you make more SQL queries, and in their cumulative sum, their cumulative time, so all of those SQL queries will be slower, and your database will require more resources in order for it to execute your SQL queries. And selector rated, again, think before you use it, because in our case, selector rated is perfectly fine, because selector rated, as you can see, we just put our product title and we use test, so we get all the things that we need. However, if I would use product type ID, for example, then I don't need selector rated at all. Why? Because why do I need to get my product if I don't use my product foreign key right here? So think about selector rated before you use it, and that's what I just wanted to say to you. Always inspect your SQL queries, what you're doing with them, and yeah, that's will be better for you and for your application. What you can do actually is just set up logging for your old Django application or for the application that you're working on right now, and you will see that you have tons of SQL queries coming from your not optimized SQL queries coming out of your application to your database. Because a lot of people omit DjangoDB backend's logging settings for the development, but I think that they are very, very beneficial for everybody, because you can literally see what are the SQL queries coming out of your program. That's I think just better. And by the way, there is one thing that I want to add, is that you can chain your functions, your optimization functions in Django. So in our case, as you can see, when you are using selector rated product, and for example, we need to use product.title. Let me just put product type right here. When we're using selector rated from product, we get again all of the fields from our product. So as you can see it right here, our SQL query is enormous. But what we can do is use dot values, and that put all the values that we need. But I want to say that if you have foreign keys and you want to get the values of the foreign keys, so of the other foreign tables, foreign models, and so on, what you can do is use the name of the foreign key. In our case, it's product _title. So if I would just put title, I'll see an error. Oh my god. Let me just... Okay, so I deleted it. Let me just use values from title. Like that. So as you can see, I have an error. Cannot resolve keyword title into field. Choices are ID, product ID, because still we do not make any requests from our product model. We make them from our product type. And because of that, we cannot query some title from somewhere. We need to specify that we want the title from our product foreign key. And in order to do so, we need to use product, so the name of the foreign key, _title. In our case, input dictionary. Oh yeah, that's the problem, because we use values, and as you know, values returns a dictionary. So you can see, dictionary is product title key inside of it. But now let's look at our query, and as you can see, select products title from products product type, where inner join, and so on. Yeah, so that's just how it works. Of course, that query is not ideal, and don't think that look at your SQL queries and think about them. Do not just use Django ORM functions blindly, because in our case, what we can do is just use product objects all values. In our case, values list, because we only have one value. You can use values, it depends on your case, but values list from title flat equals true. And we'll still receive the same result, but our query will be faster because we don't use joins as we do it in that query that we use right here. So that's just how it works. Don't use any function blindly, think about it, and yeah, that's about Django optimization. That is the first part of the series, and if you like it, leave a like, write a comment. Thank you for watching and good luck.